Hello and welcome to Things Musicians Don't Talk About with your hosts Hattie Butterworth
and me, Rebecca Toll.
Within our vibrant musical world, it can often feel that the struggles and humanity of musicians is lost and restricted.
Having both suffered in silence with mental, physical and emotional issues, we are now looking for a way to voice musicians' stories, discuss them further and to connect with the many others who suffer like we have.
No topic will be out of bounds as we're committed to raising awareness for all varieties of struggle.
So join me, Hattie and guests as we attempt to bring an end to stigma by uncovering the things musicians don't talk about.
Hello and welcome to Things Musicians Don't Talk About, coming to you this week with an awesome episode with the wonderful violinist Cliodhna Ryan, who is a violinist in the Irish Chamber Orchestra and is just the most fantastic person. She also runs the podcast Bittersweet Symphony, which hold in your mind and make sure that you go and check it out after this episode because it's just so great. It's basically reflections on the pandemic with other musicians and just asking questions about that time. It's very beautiful, very vulnerable, and it's just such an important witness to that point in our lives and the difficulties that people experience and also what they learned through that time. So in this episode, we are thrilled to be talking to Cliodhna about her experiences as a freelancer, as well as moving on to talking about more difficult elements to Cliodhna's life, such as her experience with panic disorder, which is one of the most debilitating and terrifying disorders possible. And we also talk about an accident she went through last year and how this has impacted her playing and mental health. But she's just the most wonderful, life-giving person, and I've been thinking about this episode an awful lot, and especially today actually when I had to advocate for my mental health in a work setting, and I was thinking about Cliodhna and her bravery to communicate her struggle. Anyway, we are thrilled to share this episode with you and thank Cliodhna from the bottom of our hearts for sharing her beautiful journey with us. And please go and check out Bittersweet Symphony on all podcast platforms and also on social media after this episode. Cliodhna, it's so lovely to have you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. But getting used to playing again and working again and loving
it's exhausting.
It as well. Well, I'm juggling now and juggling more than ever before. So I'm having to get accomplished at that all over again as well.
That's exactly what Rebecca said before you joined us. She was like, I'm doing too much.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. I don't know how to stop.
Yeah, because there's always that point where you got to because you take on too much because you're like, well, I need to take on this, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then there's always a point where you have to let somebody down and you know it's coming because you know you've taken on too much and it sucks. I hate it. Yeah. Yeah, we first came across you because of your awesome podcast, Bittersweet Symphony. But just for our listeners who may or may not know you, do you want to just give a brief overview of you, your life, and then obviously we'll delve deeper into it, but just bring us up to speed on who you are and how you got there?
Sure. I come from the border between the north and south of Ireland. So at the time when I was growing up, it was like interesting times. Let's just say that much. And I began playing music probably when I was about 5 or something like that. And it was always something really important to me, I think, as a young person, in order to I remember often feeling like overwhelmed with the world, with how incredible it was, with how beautiful it was. And music really helped me find a place for those thoughts and those feelings. And also, I absolutely loved literature and poetry always from when I was very, very young, and art and theatre. Um, I also love school and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I went to London when I was 18 to study, and I ended up staying there for 18 years. I did a couple of years in America. I went to the Royal Academy in Guildhall, and I did a couple of years in the States as well, kind of in the middle of my time at the Academy. And my life in London, I loved it, but it felt like I was in a long-term relationship, and I was really slowly kind of having longer periods of questioning like why I was in this relationship. I felt like full of like life was full of like promise and hope, but I started wondering, was it a false promise? And I scheduling coffee with friends that also had really busy musicians' lives. It would take 6 weeks to arrange to meet someone just for a coffee, just like this simplest thing. And I wondered what would happen if all the time I spent just surviving could be wasted on just lolling about the place or doing creative things or whatever. And I did a few long residencies supported by the Arts Council of Ireland in Banff in 2007 and 2008. I was there for full kind of winter residencies from January till April. And it really kind of solidified that idea that possibly London wasn't the place for me anymore, to try something different. I mean, my musical life was really busy and really satisfying and really rewarding. I was a member of the Irish Chamber Orchestra, so I was traveling back to Ireland for amazing projects with incredible artistic directors. And the work always felt different and challenging and interesting and exciting. And then I was freelancing, in the various orchestras in London, Newcastle, the usual schlepping about the place, and doing contemporary music as well, quite a lot, which I really love because it's a different relationship with your instrument, and it's very exploratory and creative, I find, and challenging also mentally. And yeah, I mean, I was very sad. I had a very busy string trio for many years as well. So we were, had a busy performing schedule with that too. But it was just all the other stuff, the being a person stuff. I didn't feel connected with the environment or nature anymore. And those moments of magic and flow and spontaneity that can happen in your life that are so beautiful, there wasn't much space for them. And then also there was very little diversity of people in my life. I thought about the people I knew from my little village, and like there was more diversity in that group than there was in my life as a musician. Everyone was kind of around my age. Everyone had a similar kind of educational background. 99.99% of people were white middle class, and I wondered, I was asking myself questions about what that meant for me as a person and my experience and my relationship with the wider world, So I left. I left London. I did move to Dublin, but it didn't feel like I was moving home kind of thing. It was just like, well, this is where I'll go. It wasn't like I want to move home to Ireland or anything like that. It was just, I don't want to live in London anymore. And I had this idea for a music salon for a good few years, and I never, ever would have been able to start it in London. I moved back to Ireland. We were in the middle of like the most awful recession. And I was like, okay, maybe I can make this happen here. I can create this beautiful experience and present classical music because when I say classical music, for me, that means everything from Baroque to experimental, contemporary, everything. Like I think that's a really broad term, and I kind of wanted to reclaim it. And I wanted to create intimate, kind of visceral experiences for performers and audiences, and break down boundaries and have beautiful, welcoming, convivial, open-hearted spaces. So I asked my friend who I used to play music with a lot, to like if she'd be on board to do this thing with me. And so we started Kaleidoscope then in 2008. And it was a lovely way to come back to Ireland. And I discovered an incredible community of musicians. And it very quickly became something that didn't belong to Kate and I anymore, but belonged to our community and Dublin and then the country. And yeah, since then, I suppose, and since I've been living here, there just feels like there's a breath and a kind of a space in my life for exploring lots of different things. Yeah.
And obviously a big part of what you created eventually with the Bittersweet Symphony is to do with, finding this space and I suppose respecting musicians as humans and as complex people. But in that time, since moving from London back to Ireland, to find, I don't know, this sense of like space and time and just like lolling around, as you like, I love that you say that, because it's so true. In London there's so little time just to like loll around,
be creative.
Yeah. Did you find it was more difficult to do that than you expected? Did you find you were still very busy?
It's what are you busy doing? I guess I would ask, when you ask me that question, that's a question that pops up for me, because busy for yourself, for creating something or for doing a class that you really want to do. Busy doing that feels different to busy schlepping about the place to pay your rent, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Definitely really busy. Like Kaleidoscope was, when we started it, we had no clue what we were doing. And it was literally 7 days a week for hours every day, and huge amounts of time spent on Arts Council applications and, programming, curating, and creating creative partnerships between different people. But it was so exciting and so much fun. And it was for us, and it was for audiences, and it was for our friends and our colleagues. And so that felt different to busy going to do a muddy field, and you're just like going, I hate my life. What am I doing?
And I'm getting like 20 quid for it.
Oh God. And you end up dumped on a motorway somewhere on like near IKEA, and you have to try and figure out how to get home. And like,
it's always near
I
IKEA.
don't know.
So true.
I mean,
so interesting.
But I think it's like, I definitely was really, really, really busy. And actually that kind of, with the whole pandemic, that really, like, having that not busyness was just amazing. And I think it's something that I've learned how to do, that I hope I won't unlearn. I do think like we're probably conditioned to always try to be productive from really busy lives, schooling, and then fitting in practicing and doing competitions and audition, like all of that. Like there's always something to be done, right? And
everybody seems to take a lot of pride in being so busy, but yeah, not the kind of busy for yourself, busy like I've got so many gigs, or I'm fitting in all my teaching. Like as soon as you say, I don't know, I spent all day yesterday planning this thing for me or taking this class, people are like, oh, that's so nice that you have the time to do that. And it's like, no, I'm still busy, but doing the right kind of busy for me. And yeah, it's really interesting that you kind of recognize that difference in, you can still be busy, but doing things that are for you, like you said.
yeah. Like for me, in a way, like when I was thinking about doing the podcast, I said to myself, do you know what? Like, well, I didn't know if I'd enjoy doing it for starters. You know, I had to like find out if I'd enjoy the whole process, like beginning to end. And it ended up that I absolutely loved all of it, every last bit of it, except maybe the social media side of it. But sometimes I really love that as well, and sometimes it's like, oh, but
It feels a bit
it never
overwhelming.
ends. It never
Yeah.
ends.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's a kind of it can be a real extension of the storytelling, and I absolutely love that side of it. But sometimes it can feel like, oh God, I have to do this thing.
Yeah.
But I said to myself, you know, and like creating the podcast, I was incredibly busy, but it was a hobby. I mean, I said to myself, I've never really invested serious time in a hobby. I mean, this is something I really love, and I'm learning so many new skills, and like I'm having a great time doing it. So don't like you know, to try and remind myself of that sometimes if I'm feeling like if I start using language to myself that's like, I have to do this and I have to do that. It's like, no, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. This is your life. You're making the decisions. You're in control here. And to stop, like, if I start using language like that with myself, I try to catch it because it'll just suck the joy out of everything, you know.
Yeah.
To recognize that I have choices, that I have autonomy, and I'm doing this because I adore it and because I love it and it's my choice, you know.
That's so empowering. And I think a lot of people see taking on extra projects or like, yeah, doing hobbies. I don't know. I feel like a lot of musicians and creatives try and turn that into another like string to their bow. They're like, oh, that's so great that you're doing the podcast. Like, where are you going to go with it? And it's like, well, it's my hobby. Like, essentially, like, it would be great. Well, maybe that's a bad example because we are kind of working on it. But
Yeah.
so many hobbies, people are like, oh, great. What are you going to do with that? Like, you're going to incorporate it with your music. And it's like, no, it's a hobby. Like, it's not work. Leave me alone.
Let me be bad at it if I'm bad
like,
at it.
yeah. Like, and so many people have said to me, you know, I've got another kind of 6 conversations of the podcast to put out, and I just do like a schedule of every 2 weeks. For me, that works because just that structure is supportive for me. I know you guys don't do a schedule, right?
It's a bit random, yeah.
Yeah, and that works for you. And for me, like having that schedule
Yeah.
is a rhythm, you know, that rhythm kind of helps me. And then so many people are like, and then what? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, you know, again, you need that lolling about time, right? I mean, the ending of this season, if it is one season, and if there'll be another, I don't know. That'll be in 12 weeks. And then I don't know. I don't know what I'll be thinking or feeling in 12 weeks. And maybe I'll want to just do something completely different for a few months. And then if there's a seed, like you need space you need to, like one of my interview guests, actually, Katrina Frost, and it's like one of my favorite interviews. She said, you know, you have to scatter seeds, like just scatter seeds and see what grows. But you have to do that bit of gardening, don't you? Like, you know, because otherwise, and waiting and nurturing, and that comes with
things under the surface.
And,
that people don't necessarily see or that isn't performative.
Yeah.
You know, but it's still doing things towards whatever. But I just love how, you know, when we spoke last week, you talked about how this podcast was, you didn't even know if it was gonna be a podcast.
No.
Yeah, I just think, wow, that is so free. Like to have these conversations just because you wanted the conversations. And I would love you to talk to us about what were the conversations you needed to have with people. You know, what was this pull towards talking in the recovery of the pandemic?
Well, I mean, for me, like language and communication and talking always have been really, really important and really powerful. I think telling our stories, speaking our truth. Well, I mean, I guess I would say telling my story, speaking my truth, has always been very impactful for me and important. And I mean, I've had therapy for many years. Yeah.
Woo!
Rebecca's
Hype up
yeah.
therapy.
The impact of like talking and communicating, but also the power of listening and a holding space. It connects us as humans, I think, with ourselves and with each other. And you know, authenticity, authentic, you know, courageous communication can be really impactful, and I think can have the power to change a culture. And I guess there was a I mean, I was very isolated during the pandemic. Um, and from someone who's, I guess, the years leading up to March 2020, my whole life was my work, really. I mean, I was playing, performing all the time, and I took it really seriously, always prepared, always practiced. And from that and that sense of, I think I also love the feeling of belonging and community that my work gives me. And from being so, because also like my freelance work here in Ireland, I feel very much like um like a part of those orchestras, um, you know, which is really lovely. I don't feel, you know, I never take that for granted, but I feel very much like I'm a, you know, I'm a second cousin. I'm a first cousin,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
even, you know, I'm a part of the family, which is really lovely. And, you know, the time over the last few years, like those relationships have stood the test of time. And those orchestras have been there for me, as well as my own family of ICO, which is really lovely. And I don't think that would be the case in every country. I don't know, but it is the case here, which is amazing. I was just so, in my own experience, I had a really, really difficult time with huge panic that just came from nowhere, that completely bit me on the ass. And I had no idea what was happening to me. And it was really, really, really hard and like recovery from that. And I see it as recovery because I think when you've had an experience of panic disorder, it's so traumatizing that it kind of imprints itself upon you biologically, mentally, emotionally, and it wasn't a linear recovery from that. So I would think I was okay, and I'd have a few months okay, and next thing, I'm having to get taken off the edge of the motorway by police because I'm throwing up and nearly blacking out, you know. And at the same time, I was experiencing like huge freedom and I mean, it was such a paradoxical experience. Like it was heaven and hell at once. I couldn't make any sense of it really. And because I was exploring like my, you know, we had a long, long time in Ireland where you could only be within 2 kilometers of your home and then 5 kilometers of your home. We had the longest lockdown in Europe here. And I live alone. And so like getting amazing neighborhood connections, friendships, communities, you know, street cocktails, sundowners, picking wild garlic along the canal. I'm so lucky that I live really close to one of the main canals that runs through Dublin, but also the River Liffey. So I had these like water connections really close by me. And then Phoenix Park, which is like acres and kilometers of like incredible parkland. They were all within my 2 kilometers. So as I was experiencing this huge freedom, I was having, I won Arts Council awards to do like study Baroque violin with Rachel Podger. I was having this incredible mentorship and exploration. I was doing a postgrad in Trinity College Dublin on creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and having an amazing time doing that. Like, that was an intense year of academic study. And at the same time, there was this absolute nightmare thing going on as well. I mean, I've always loved radio. I mean, I've loved language, I've loved words. I spoke to you about poetry and theatre, and like, I learned to read before I went to school. And I think language and words were even music before I even knew what music was, you know, for me. And they had texture. And I mean, poetry is always where I go when I don't understand how I feel, you know. It's a huge solace to me. And then I fell in love with radio. I was always in love with radio. And like, I was addicted to podcasts before there was even a podcast app. And because I connected with radio when I was living in America, and when I moved back to the UK from America, like, I used to be addicted to this American life. It started the year I went to Dallas, and then I discovered that I was able to podcast it. And so I had always thought about doing it, but like, you never want to say it out loud, guys, do you?
No.
Like,
everyone's like,
you
oh,
sound
great.
like a dick.
Yeah, you're like, you want to talk about yourself more?
You want to make a podcast? Like, who isn't making a podcast? You know? So I had the thought there, and I remember the first time saying it to a friend. We were walking in Phoenix Park, and I remember saying it out loud. And I knew once I said it out loud that I couldn't take it back. So I was almost like choking on it. Like, I knew I wanted, but I had to see what it felt like to just put it out there into the world.
Even if you can't take it back.
Yeah. And then I remember, like, I remember the first time asking someone, it was like in a rehearsal break. It was with the chamber orchestra. I remember going up and kind of going, I'm thinking of, you know, and I don't know what it is, but would you be open to talk? And I had the idea of Bittersweet Symphony, and because I kind of like that structure, gives some shape, and it can hold people, you know. And I do think memory and recollecting is really significant. And that's the person that's been in therapy a lot. Speaking, I guess. I think, like, forgetting is as much a dismantling of something as remembering is a storing of something. So I think it's an important process. And with our freelance lives, we can be so slippy, right? With, like, our experience can feel like it's always slipping away from us. Like, we can't hold on to it. Like, the only time I would connect with what I had done in my life would be when I'm doing my tax return. And then I'm like, oh, right. Oh, from your failures to your achievements, to the things you can be proud of, the moments that meant a lot, you know, they all kind of become one mush as you're just living in your diary, and one gig to the next. And it's just the music that you're playing. Is the Messiah? Is it Christmas carols? Is it whatever that you even you know, connect with what's going on. So there was a part of me that wanted to really, to answer your question in a very long way, there's a part of me that really wanted to connect with my community. I was having such an extreme experience, and I wondered, what are other people going through? Like, what are we going through? We don't have a place to gather and talk and share. And we so often just bring our professional selves to work. You know, leave your emotions at the door, game face, show business, invincible, you know, eternally grateful, no ambivalence ever, only positivity, no pain, no injury, no fear, all of that kind of stuff, you know. I thought, what would happen if I just created a holding space for connection? And I didn't know if anyone would be really open. I had no clue. And I thought, I still have the thing that I sent to people. I asked 16 people in the end. Well, I asked more people, but like, a lot of not a lot of people, but some people said no because they weren't comfortable with it. And everyone that I asked, I said, please, like I told them all the reasons why they shouldn't talk to me as well. Because I did really want like an honest exchange and an open exchange as much as people felt comfortable with. And
it's very brave though.
Yeah, so brave.
I was
stick to that.
well, I was really I was so moved. Like I remember, after the first few conversations, just kind of like being like, oh my God, like people are being really like these people that I've known for years, that I've worked with for years, they're completely opening themselves up
Yeah.
and being so like brave and honest and vulnerable and choosing to use the space in that way. And I just thought it was incredible. I found it so moving, so moving.
How did you because I find, well, I'd be interested to hear about your experience of holding the space for so many people that are opening up and being vulnerable. How did that leave you feeling afterwards, or yeah, how was it?
In terms of your own sort of self-care, or
Yeah. Well, I guess I was in therapy no, was I in therapy? Oh God, I wasn't.
I always have this
No,
moment.
my therapy finished because I had a year with the community mental health, like after the whole panic disorder thing started, until June 2021. But I actually did, I did a really good coaching training. So I was still connecting. I made a really, really good friend. Actually, we were on a Zoom last night. People still Zoom for hours. Me and Hannah Zoom for hours. And we were saying like
That's
we've
really
never
nice.
actually met each other. We've never met each other, but we're such amazing friends. So we were talking a lot while I was having these conversations. And then I guess I was um, getting support from friends and family. But also like I got such comfort and solace actually from the conversations and from the openness, like we all do, I think, when we hear another person's experience, another human being's experience. It's so comforting, and because it creates, that sense of connection and that identification. Um, there's things that you recognize about your own experience and what people are sharing, and that's comforting. So it felt very soft in me, it felt very soft and gentle and loving, and it felt like a real privilege. Yeah. So it didn't feel like I was carrying anything really.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
after the weight of suffering from a panic disorder in a time of isolation,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel like sometimes talking to other people openly, I think what you're trying to say is I don't know, your experience, it can be so dark that actually hearing someone else's experience brings a lightness to your
Yeah.
own. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it definitely illuminated. And I guess to add to what was happening for me at the time,
Yeah.
I recorded all the conversations in August and September 2021 and didn't make any decisions about what I was doing with those conversations until they were all done. And I took a break of about 2 weeks and had to think about it. And then I was like, okay, well, can I edit? What's editing? No clue. YouTube. But after the first conversation, I was cycling home one evening and I got knocked down by a car. And my left hand, I was like the car completely went like if I had been going any faster, it literally would have mowed me down and I probably wouldn't have survived. My left hand was like under the handlebar of my bike. And I mean, I got bruised and scratched and scraped all down my right side. And I had like a whiplash injury for a couple of months. But my left hand completely was buggered. One finger was broken, but then all the other joints and fingers completely, got massively swollen. So like my thumb was hugely swollen, my first finger, every finger except my little finger, which is my most useless finger and always has been and usually is for string players. It's the one we hate. So I basically, and I had to go to the police and all this kind of stuff. And then, consultants and hand physios. And until the end of November, when I saw a hand specialist that works with musicians called Mark Phillips in London.
Oh, I saw him.
Mark Phillips!
He's great.
Oh my God. And he gave me hope. But until I connected with Mark at the end of November, so it was August, September, October, November, 3 months, I basically either couldn't or was told not to use my left hand at all. So I couldn't use it at all for about 2 months because it was so swollen. And I didn't have like a pinching motion. And the finger was like gross, but all the other fingers were also completely swollen except the little guy. And I couldn't tie my shoelaces. I couldn't, change my bed sheets. I mean, it was absolutely awful. Like, and I had to buy lots of devices to open my, to open jars, to move, I had to buy all these kind of disability devices from these like websites that had people that were in their 80s in their images, like, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to play the violin again. And every time ICO played in Dublin, like the first performances back for people in Ireland were in September 2021. We weren't allowed play to audiences until September 2021. And I remember going to that concert and like when the orchestra walked out on stage until they left the stage at the end, I was in pieces crying because I didn't know if I'd ever make sound again, if I'd ever be that, when you become like, when you're not even yourself anymore, you don't know what your name is. You don't know who you are. You are nothing. You have no ego. You are just sound, harmony, melody, rhythm, phrase, texture. I didn't know if I'd ever feel that again. And at this time, I was having these conversations and then creating and editing. And it was like, because that was very, very dark and incredibly difficult and incredibly hopeless for many months. And again, I was completely isolated because we were in lockdowns here. And so this connection with my community and with these people that I were like, every conversation I'd have, I'd be like, there's so much beauty and humanity and vulnerability in these people. And I never took the time to have those conversations and make those connections in my real life. And that I in like real life before COVID life. And I said to myself, this was right in front of you. What's like, how have you been living that you haven't allowed time for this? Like,
Would you have released the episodes if you hadn't have had your accident?
I think I possibly would have felt compelled, to like that. It was, again, that thing of it not being necessarily mine, but like being a custodian of some sort. A repository, like a custodian of this repository of human experience. Everyone that spoke to me wanted to tell their story. And so I think I would have, but I don't know how I would have and if it would have looked different. you know, I don't know what that would have looked like, but I think, yeah, because I think after a few conversations, it felt like, and do you know what? Like, this is nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
This is nothing to do with me. This is about our community. This is about also connecting with the people that come and watch us. You know, like I said in one of those pieces of writings, you know, we go out in and out a different door to the people that come in the front. They don't see the, you know, our lives, people eating out of Tupperware, you know, teaching between the rehearsal and the concert, running home to put kids to bed. I don't know. They don't see that, you know. And so I wanted to tell them that as well. Yeah.
Did you have an idea of maybe what you're, I mean, I can't, I'm feeling so emotional listening to you, because it's just like,
Yeah.
what was going through your head about maybe if the violin wasn't possible again, what would you have turned to? Or was communication maybe the thing that you thought, right, I can really do this because I'm so passionate about it?
Do you know, I think what I really was surprised to find within myself was some kind of trust. I don't think I would have necessarily felt that. I really feel, and it's interesting because I've literally just gone back to work 3 weeks ago since August. So I was not working for 8 months with this injury, and now I have arthritis in my hand permanently in those joints, which is fine, actually, it turns out, because if you talk about that, it turns out other people tell you about all their arthritic bits and bobs that they have that they've never talked about before. You know, some people did say to me, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody that you have arthritis. Don't tell anybody that you've had this injury.
Wow.
Because it'll affect how people see you. It'll affect how people judge your ability as a violinist, you know. But it turns out when you name it, when you say it, then other people go, oh yeah, this joint and that and this arthritis and look at this wobbly, this crookedy bit and
This bit's
you know,
falling off.
I guess I was worried financially, of course, but I think I had a kind of a trust and a faith that everything would be okay. And I didn't know what that meant, but I kind of knew it somehow. Whether that meant not play, I think that the thought of not being like not experiencing that sound thing, because for me, resonance, harmony, like when you create a perfectly in tune kind of chord, or the energy, like the energy of like a rhythm, a bass line, like to not be in that again, that was pretty heartbreaking to think about. But I so enjoyed creating the podcast and I learned so many skills. And then, you know, I was having to take so many risks. I mean, you guys, I'm sure know this. Like you're having to put yourself out there the whole time and get comfortable with such extreme discomfort. Get comfortable with just that. Yeah, I've got my imposter syndrome coat on today. That's fine. You know, this is a familiar coat. It's not going to stop me, you know, to kind of walk alongside all that discomfort, that fear, that imposter syndrome stuff, and all that risk that you take when you create something, you put it out there and you don't even do it for a job. Like, who are you to do it? You didn't go to college for it. You don't get paid for it.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm
who
not
do you think you
sponsored
are?
by anyone for
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And you don't know if it's going to affect, like, even though it's nothing to do with your job, you don't know if it's going to affect your job. Like, I often have that where I'm like, are people going to hear this and be like, oh, we shouldn't hire her? And then I'm like,
Yes.
I'd rather just keep doing this and not get that work.
Yeah.
But easier said than felt.
So I think like I had got used to that. I think as performers, as musicians, and you know, we're schooled from such a young age, you know, you get so used to doing, you only do something if you know you're really good at it, or you know, to do something for the enjoyment of the process as opposed to the outcome is something that we don't get, you know, because we don't have time for hobbies and learning and stuff. You know, we don't have time to go to that pottery class and discover that we're shit at it, but we love kind of exploring clay. we're just doing this one thing that we're excellent at, that we dedicate our lives to, and that we spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours every day from when we're children. That we can be very cautious about taking those kind of risks. I've found that in myself, and this was a really good exercise for me. And I think it taught me that, you know what, I'm going to be okay. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I can just put myself in places where, you know what, I'll learn. If I'm not good enough, if I can't do it, that's okay as well. Like, so what? Find out, discover, explore, and I learned to do all of that. And I think that in itself is a skill, right? Getting comfortable with the discomfort.
Were there any similarities between when you started out as a freelancer? Did you have that kind of hope and trust that your career would, or was this a completely new kind of trust?
Oh, it's completely new. It was trust in myself as a person. I think I never even trusted myself as a musician, despite, winning, competitions. I remember my trio getting a glowing review in the Strad for like a Queen QEH like thing. And again, it was that slippery connection. Every achievement, everything just kind of vanished, and it always felt like I was starting from zero. Am I good enough? How am I meant to be in this context? How do you want me to be? How do you need me to be in a culture that wasn't mine as well? There's a lot of cultural differences between, the UK and Ireland, well, between England and Ireland particularly, I think, and trying to navigate that and figure that out. All the unspoken stuff.
But you had a trust in your body somehow that it would pull you through, or was it trust in the music?
I felt very let down by my body, actually. I felt very angry with it for a while, and that was difficult. Like I was very, very angry for a good few months at my body. It was a trust in myself in that I'd be okay. Not necessarily music, because I didn't know if I'd ever be able to have anything to do with music again. But I was like, do you know what? You're going to be all right. You've got this. Like, you're, and I knew that I had loving friendships and loving family as well. I wasn't alone. I had to be, I would allow myself to be carried as well. That I didn't have to do it alone, that I could lean on people, that I could let the people that love me care for me, And I think that's not so easy to do either, always.
I read a quote, well, I was reading a book yesterday, and it was saying how, I can't remember exactly, but it was by Rebecca Solnit, and she said that asking for help is a generous act because it allows others to help you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't negate the fact that it's hard to do, but I think that generosity goes both ways.
Yeah, it's so true. And it was something I didn't do, I don't think, before the pandemic. And it was, probably a defense mechanism. Because when you allow people help, when you ask for help, there is vulnerability in that. You're saying, I need you, help me. And people could just go, no, but then you're allowing people to connect to you and hold you up. And we all know how good that feels, And so I totally, that quote really chimes with me. Did it chime with you as well when you heard it? What did it mean for you?
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. Because, I guess because I've always been a people pleaser. And actually part of that has been like not allowing people to help me because I didn't want to cause them any trouble, or I wanted to help them and I wanted to help them that way. But actually that doesn't end up very well. So actually I took a lot of solace in like, I know it's okay to ask for help, but it was like, actually this kind of resonates with me of like, I'm allowing people to kind of come into the same space as my vulnerability, and that in
Practice their
itself,
love.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
gift in itself.
Yeah. And have you practiced that?
Since yesterday.
Yeah, like
think?
now and again. I think I could be better at it for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's a learning, isn't it? It's like anything. We're just learning these things. How about you, Hattie? Would you?
I think it's harder for me, but just because, to be completely honest, I have had experiences where opening up has backfired. And not always, and probably not, that's not the rule. It's definitely the exception that someone feels uncomfortable. But it make, you know, it definitely stays with you when you get met with sort of, why are you telling me this? Or like,
yeah.
And I think maybe that comes down to me not always sharing with the right people, or
at the right time for
or at the
you.
right time. Yeah, for me, yeah. And or, you know, not thinking, oh, maybe the best place for me right now is therapy to help me through this, because nobody else maybe is either qualified properly for it, or will, you know, there's a risk they might misunderstand me or something. So I love the quote, because I do think it gives people power to feel that opening up doesn't have to be this one-way experience. It can actually show other people that you want to share with them. I don't know, you want to connect with them.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I keep thinking, Cliodhna, about when we spoke on the phone about your experience with anxiety and panic, because obviously, or maybe not obviously, but that's a very, very big part of my experience of my whole life. Pretty much since I was like 7 or 8, I've had periods of panic disorder. And you spoke about experiencing it on stage.
Oh God.
And if you don't mind, I just feel like I'd love you to talk about that experience, because
it's so awful.
Because you actually like you shared like with your orchestra about what was going on, and that's something I've never had the courage to do. And like when you said that to me, I was like, right, I need to hear like how this went.
I mean, I really feel, and I've really noticed it since I've gone back to work, that I am not the person that I was in March 2020. Like I have been changed. I have been irrevocably changed by the last couple of years. So while I mightn't have ever had a panic attack just before going on stage, I might know also may not have asked for help, that thing of asking for help. I might not have trusted to ask for help. I might have just, I don't know what I would have done. But both those things, they're the kind of two sides, I suppose, of the coin, you know. But it was my very first gig back since the beginning of August. And I was in one of my freelancing roles with the RTE Concert Orchestra. And we were doing a concert in the National Concert Hall with an incredible pianist, soloist from here called Finian Collins. And it was such a lovely gig. It was absolutely gorgeous. It's a small orchestra, so it's small sections, which I'm very comfortable with. A Mozart overture that I'd played millions of times before, and a couple of Beethoven piano concertos, right? Like, you know, absolutely gorgeous, amazing, great conductor, everything wonderful. And the first few rehearsal days felt fine. They felt comfortable. I mean, it was amazing to be in that sound again, absolutely gorgeous. And I loved it. And the leader, Mia Cooper, said to me on the first day, she said, you know, if you'd be more comfortable, because I think I was sitting, they're still sitting, they've just started sharing stands again, but I think I would have been sitting like the third desk back on the outside. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, number 5 in first, I think. Yeah. So she said, if you'd be more comfortable sitting on the inside. And I was like, not at all, you know, because I've always been comfortable front to back, side, you know, wherever, put me wherever I could, you know, sit number 2 or sit, you know, number 12. I'm happy anywhere I am, you know. and each has different challenges, and I enjoy that. And so there was fine, 2 days rehearsal, great. It felt lovely to connect with people again. Also, I hadn't been in real life since I launched the podcast. So people were saying things to me because I hadn't had much of that kind of feedback, you know, and that was lovely as well. And next thing, concert, we had done our rehearsal, fine. So we were in the concert hall, you know, obviously the microphones are there, you know, the streaming cameras are there, and you know, that changes the nature of, you know, it's something to overcome in your mind anyway. But I was grand, and I had been in, I think, what was I doing? I was getting something from my car, which was at the front of the hall, and I started seeing people arrive for the concert, and it was 7:45 and the concert began at 8, and I started walking around the back to the stage door, and next thing, whoosh, my whole body, head, like it started from my feet and just went through my whole body. And anyone that's had anything like a panic disorder knows this feeling, because there's no anxiety, there's no warning. It's just 0 to 100 in a second. Suddenly you're there, you know? And so shaking, numb hands, numb feet, tingling, my vision started going. Then I get kind of, you know, also kind of, as well as kind of tiny tunnel vision, like where you're just like looking through tiny little, like as if you put little holes in front of your eyes. I also get kind of like flashy things, like a lot of distortion in my sight. And then I get auditory stuff as well, with like ringing or things sounding really far away, and really sick. And I was just, you know, this all happens in that 1 second. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And my whole body is shaking, and I'm walking around the stage door, and it's like 7:45 and I don't know what I'm going to do. It's absolutely awful. I just, like, if someone had just come and like vanished me, I would have been very happy. And I went in and into the, like, through the stage door. And I opened the dressing room, you know, like, I mean, what are you supposed to do when you're having a panic attack? You know, you're supposed to get grounded. You're supposed to do all the counting. You're supposed to lie down or sit down or be quiet and you're in a really, really busy dressing room just before a concert where everyone is chatting, everyone is bustling around, makeup, chats, bathroom, blah, 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 blah. There's nowhere to go. Like, where are you going to go? And you don't have time to get yourself right again. Like, you don't have time. I didn't know what to do. And I saw my friend who knew that I had been in a really, really bad place and knew the extent of how bad things had been for me. And I called her into the corridor and I said, I'm in the beginnings of a really bad panic attack. Can we swap so that I'm on the inside, so that if I need to leave the stage, I can? And she was like, no, I'm really sorry. I'd just be too uncomfortable. And she went back in and I was like, holy shit. I was like, what am I going to do? I know. So I went to the bathroom. I threw up, came out. The leader was there and the co-leader, Brona Cahill, who I've known since I was a child, actually. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And I was actually having intrusive thoughts as well, which were really, really frightening. And I said,
so was that the first time you'd had those?
I had just started having them a few months before, but they had been fine for a long time. And I said, guys, I don't know what to do. And Mia they both looked at me. They're like, Cliodhna, are you okay? And I said, I'm having a really bad panic attack and I don't think I can go on stage. Because for me, I was just imagining being trapped, like with the cameras, with the live broadcast, with this packed hall looking at me right by the soloist. I was going to be really close to the soloist. And what if I started, like, it was absolutely awful. And Mia just looked at me and she said, Cliodhna, we're here to help you. How can we help you? And they were just both so understanding. She was like, I said, maybe if I sit right at the back by the stage door, so if I need to leave. And they were like, this is completely understandable. This is happening. You've been through such a huge trauma. You haven't played for months. We're going to do everything we can to help and support you. And she went and she asked a lovely guy who was sitting at the back, would he swap with me? She went on stage. She changed our pads. And this was at like 5 to 8. And I went on and I got through it. It was really, really difficult. And I was having intrusive thoughts the whole way through. And I was having full body experience the whole way through. And I wasn't right physically until that concert was on a Thursday. And I wasn't right physically until the Sunday, because I had that hangover thing that you get after bad panic attacks with headaches and aches and nausea and everything. But since then, I did a concert that weekend, no, the following week, with like TV cameras and everything, and that was fine. And then I was back in the concert hall and I was co-leading second violins and symphony orchestra with a sold out Messiah performance, and I got through the whole thing and I really enjoyed it. Oh, guys, like I'm back.
Yeah.
Every gig I've done since, like I've been able to enjoy my instrument. I was right by Martin, his principal cello, and he was playing, the continuo part. So I was able to connect right into the bass line, which always really calms my body and grounds me, And I just had a brilliant time sharing the experience, asking for help, allowing myself to be helped. But then also the fact that the next gig I did with them, they still put me close to the front. They still trusted me. Yeah. They didn't kind of go, okay, well, what do we do now with this one? They were like, you're going to be fine. We know you're going to be okay. If you're not okay, ask us for help. But because I was thinking I'm going to have to quit performing, but they trusted me and they saw it as a process. They said, this happened once, maybe it'll happen again. Maybe it won't,
But it's things like your podcast and you talking about it and raising awareness that helps. The inconsistency of it is what really struggles when there's no awareness. It's that people, they're not trusting you, or we've talked about this quite a lot, Hattie and I, but like people assuming your limits without you telling them, but yeah, it takes them to create an atmosphere of, you can ask us for help if you need help, or if and when you need help. And it won't be every time, and we trust that you'll ask us. That is such a huge thing.
Yeah. And even I have to admit that talking about it here, that feels difficult for me. Talking about it with you guys so publicly. And part of my conditioning is going, but what if people think you now can't do, because I've got some big chamber music gigs coming up. I know I'll be fine. I have so many skills. I mean, anyone that's had these kind of experiences, you are given such an array of tools and skills, and it's a massive education as well. And I know I'll be fine, but there is part of me that is going, be quiet. What are you doing? What are you doing? I have to acknowledge that, because it wouldn't be truthful for me if I didn't acknowledge that there is part of me that feels frightened at sharing this with you in this moment.
I mean,
thank you
so much, because I don't think we've had someone share an actual on-stage experience of panic. And it's real, it happens. It's happened to me and
me.
Yeah, but it's what do you do? And I don't know. I can't tell you how much I just know that you opening up is just it's helped me so much, just to know that it really doesn't discriminate on who you are, how successful you are,
and that you went to the leaders help you. That's what I would always be worried of, is going to the I would want to maybe tell the people either side of me, maybe, but apart from that, I wouldn't. But yeah, knowing that they helped you is just but
But guys,
Yes.
the conversations in the dressing room that
Yeah.
happened because of that. Because also, like, I was aware that the whole orchestra saw that, like, in the rehearsals and everything, I was sitting close to the front and the outside. Suddenly, I'm there at the back. What am I doing there? Why am I there? Like, the whole orchestra see that, know that. What's happened? And the conversations that were had in the dressing room and the sharing that people from front to back did about their own experiences and how they had overcome them, through psychological work, through, different medications at different points. There were conversations that were had because of what happened. It is interesting why we don't talk about it, but I know why, because I can hear that voice in my head right now.
And
but,
I mean, I still get it every time I post anything, release any episodes with an ounce of truth.
Yeah.
To be honest,
I think because it's not just a
terrifying.
voice, it's not just a voice in your head. Like, we've all heard somebody say something similar to that, of being like, oh, you shouldn't share this, or you should do. And I think usually I think in music education, and I feel as much as these conversations are happening in workspaces, I never heard any ounce of it in education. And I know it's hard, and I know it's a whole minefield, but I just, that voice isn't just in our heads, which is
But like, from being so angry with my body and with a panic attack as well, you can feel very
let down, betrayed by your brain,
completely, and powerless. Also, you can feel quite powerless at times. Then at the same time, when all this stuff was happening for me on stage, all my training was working. It's amazing. I didn't even have a bow shake. Like, what? I was able, like, I don't know how, but everything worked. Like, I don't think I don't think I played a wrong note. I think it was absolutely grand, but what was awful was what was happening for me, and the impact on my body for the days afterwards, like the toll that it took and how ill it made me for like those few days afterwards. But I was completely able to perform. And that, that's training, that's discipline. And that's, that kind of said, okay, you can trust this skill, that whatever's happening, you can still, this will make it happen. You might be going completely, thinking the most difficult things, but
that's true. We often kind of worry about our brain and our body kind of disconnecting, but actually in some circumstances it's pretty good.
I know, I know.
Yeah, body, you go on ahead.
I know. The next gig I had, I actually brought my colouring with me.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I have this because I find it very calming, and it brings me completely into the present. So I actually, even though this was like out in the west of Ireland, I actually in my suitcase put like a few colouring books and like different colour markers and stuff like that. And I brought them to the rehearsal and sound check and stuff. And like between the gig, like the rehearsal and the gig, I just sat there colouring. Like
that's incredible.
It worked.
Like I thought,
why not?
Just mind yourself. Like, why would this, just mind yourself the way that you have been minding yourself, So, but yeah. Anyway.
That's amazing. I mean, I would love sort of to finish if you could tell us a bit more about how people can follow your podcast, any kind of upcoming episodes to listen out for. Or anything else you'd like to finish sharing?
Well, I am, let me see. Well, the podcast, Bittersweet Symphony, is on all the usual spots. All the usual podcast platforms, I think, I hope. Yes, it is. And then I what I love doing actually is, well, I say I don't love it 100% of the time, but 99% of the time I do love doing it. That all the people that I have on the podcast share loads of photographs with me. I get them to go back through their phones, back through 2020 and 2021, and share a lot of the photos and experiences that they talk about in the episodes. So then I share those on social media. So they might be associated with their bitter, their sweet, and their bittersweet memory, because that's something we talk about. But there's also like general kind of experiences that they've had, the way their lives were, things that they enjoyed, all that kind of stuff. What matters to them in their life, and what they think, what they're taking away and how they want to live going forward. So I share all of that on my own Instagram, which is ryan.cliodhna. And my first name is spelled Cliodhna. It's an Irish name. So that's ryan.cliodhna on Instagram. And then I have a Facebook page called Bittersweet Symphony Podcast. And then I have my own Facebook, which is my own name. And then I have Twitter as well, which is Cliodhna Violin. I actually remember like Googling the first week that the podcast was coming out. I actually Googled, how does Twitter work? Because I was like,
I still don't know.
That's in my search history. How does Twitter work?
I love that. I mean, I don't know.
It's so weird.
I still think I don't know.
So weird, man. But it works.
Yeah, and I have 6 more episodes coming up. And they're with let's see, this Steve is next. He's a percussionist in the RT Concert Orchestra. Then Anita, she's a violinist, freelancer, also plays with Irish Baroque Orchestra. We have Dan Bates, an amazing oboist. He lives in London. He's our principal oboe in Irish Chamber Orchestra. Emma Roach, she lives in Glasgow. Elaine Clark, she's leader. Like, what's actually cool about the podcast, what I love about it, is that I have people from the UK and Ireland living in both countries, whatever. So there's a lot about like emigrant and immigrant experiences, being away from family, that kind of thing. People had babies during lockdown. People couldn't travel to their country for many months. I kind of spoke to people from every section of the orchestra.
That's great.
People that had jobs, as well as people that were freelancers, and front to back as well. So like the leader of ICO talked to me, and one of the leaders of the National Symphony Orchestra talked to me, and they were equally open and brave in what they shared. As everyone kind of took risks actually. And then there's a huge age range as well. And what's interesting was how different everyone's experience was, as well as being the same, and it's not just really about a pandemic experience. It's about people's lives and what they discovered about who they were, and how they want to live, because I think it was a time of reevaluation for everyone. Yeah. So
it'd be interesting to follow up with them and see whether they're still living like that.
Yeah, and if they've honored their experiences. And it's been nice actually to be back working again, because I'm talking a lot to people that I had those conversations with, and they're sharing those kind of, they're sharing those pieces. And for them, like when their episode is released, it sometimes reconnects them with like where they were, and they were kind of saying never again this, or I want to make sure to do that. And it's kind of reminding them, oh, wait a minute, you're getting pulled back into this freelance life or whatever. And so it's an anchor for them as well, which is really nice. Yeah.
Oh, it's so amazing that you've done it.
Yeah, honestly. And it's been really great to talk more about it and learn more about you and your journey, which has been, I don't know if bittersweet really sums it up.
It definitely does. It definitely does. And I've felt kind of, it's been nice to It's been lovely. Well, and it feels like a leveler actually to talk to you guys because, of course, you know, there was so much sharing that the people that I spoke to did, and I didn't really do that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt bad about that in some senses, because, yeah,
It's tricky providing a space for someone and also make you want to be like, yeah, me too. Like, I want to share mine as well, but you're providing them with the space. And then, like
yeah,
you said, it's not about you.
yeah.
But so you realize so much about yourself through these conversations that you almost want to have like a follow-up solo episode after every single one.
I know. But as well, it's just that bit of like, you know, they're kind of standing there like naked and you're in all your clothes and it doesn't feel fair. So this feels like, you know, like I've been, you know, you've given me an opportunity actually to kind of correct that a bit, you know, because,
Well,
you
we're
know,
so grateful. I can't tell
Mm.
you, like, your story definitely needs to be heard because it's going to help so many people. I can't tell you, like, I feel like I've gone through every emotion listening to
well,
you.
I would really encourage, yeah, I think, I think also like sometimes, you know, allowing people to giving people the benefit of the doubt as well. Like that's proven to be like people rise up. I don't know, like when I've
Mm.
asked for help, you know, not knowing what would happen with that, you know, it's just or like providing a space for people to talk and not knowing what would happen with that. People would just constantly amaze you, really,
Yeah.
if you allow them to. And you're right, Hattie, not to say that like you can't receive like knockbacks or, you know, end up like disappointed or hurt by how you share something and how that might be received. And that is difficult. Um, but I think being true to yourself, it's all we can do, really, isn't it? Just to be honest and true to ourselves and honor that and allow people to help. Yeah. That act of generosity. Yeah.
You're so right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.